Good morning. You guys hear me okay? Yes, sir. Everybody all right? My name is Sherman Brown. I'm here with McCarthy Strategic Solutions, moderating this panel. The panel we're in here for today is Addiction and Leadership, How Authentic and Transformative Leaders Are Emerging from the Adversity of Substance Use Disorder. So one, just making sure everybody's in the right room. We have, just to go over a few of the housekeeping here, any phones, laptops, whatever you've got out, obviously have them out, take pictures, do everything you want, but please silence them. Videotaping is not permitted, so just remember that. We've got the video going in the back for future. And you can download the RX Summit mobile app to view the PowerPoints and the claim CE for the session. The order for the session, we've got two presenters. I want you to save your questions until the end. I will make sure that they have, I know these guys, they're both from Kentucky. I'm from Kentucky, so I can make sure they stay on time. But I'll make sure that we keep time for you guys' questions. We want to make sure that we're mindful of that as well. For the session, we've got Jason Roop. Jason is the Executive Director of Workforce Education at Campbellsville University. We also have Brian Privett, Government and Public Affairs Director at Isaiah House. Their bios are listed, and you can go to the app as well for those. Just be prepared, and get their information there. Without any further ado, Jason.
All right. Well, thank you, Sherman, for the introductions, and thank you guys for being here at this session today. I believe it'll be a very informative and a powerful one. And I'd like to start by just sharing something with you. Probably, in fact, not probably, the best leader that I have ever known, I met in rehab. And he wasn't a client, no, he wasn't a staff member. He was a client just like I was. And he had just gotten to the Isaiah House in October of 2013, shortly before I arrived there after a 17-year battle with addiction. And he had a checkered background, but that didn't stop him from constantly encouraging others to pursue their dreams and helping them to achieve it. He was always thinking creatively and had the determination and tenacity to accomplish his goals. My friend would go on to help hundreds of people advance their education and improve their lives and change their communities. And most importantly, he was not alone. I seen something there in that treatment setting, in that treatment facility, that was very powerful. I seen a lot of people there who had checkered past, yet they were encouraging, inspiring, and empowering others around them. It was phenomenal. And I took note of what I observed. And I turned it into my dissertation topic in 2019 and successfully defended it 3 years later when I earned my PhD. And that topic, the leadership traits of people with substance use disorder, has led to 2 peer-reviewed publications, a second study which is currently being conducted, which includes over 140 participants all across the Commonwealth of Kentucky. And it's the foundation for the trait-based model of recovery, which you're about to hear about. You see, guys, it matters where we start. And for too long, addiction treatment has started from the problem, when instead we should start at the solution, because the solution is hidden within the problem. The solution is hidden within the destructive behaviors. It's these hidden treasures that are known as character traits, personality traits, experiences, but they've been hijacked by chemicals. The bottom line, when you begin to identify and start from this place and identify these hidden treasures, you're starting from within, from the place of absolutes, from the true essence of who we really are. And that's where life is found. And the shame, isolation, and hopelessness fade. And what takes center stage is a recovery journey that is filled with confidence, dignity, commitment, purpose, and hope. This is treatment from the inside out, not from the outside in. And for the next 30 minutes or so, our aim is to show you how starting from strength can change the face of addiction treatment. Here are the faculty disclosures, and here are the learning objectives. You can read over them. They're in the packet in front of you, but generally speaking, we're going to walk through the leadership traits that people with SUD commonly hold, describe the relational processes in the development of leadership, and compare the leadership approaches for those in recovery versus those who are not in recovery, and discuss how entrepreneurs in recovery can positively impact their communities through elevated employment rates. All right, so here's an overview as we get started of the trait-based model of recovery. So this model builds upon strengths, those traits that I mentioned earlier. It does not start at deficiencies. It does not start at deficits. It truly is a person-centered approach, meaning that it is tailored to each person's individual characteristics and treatment needs, and celebrates and supports the very life of that person. The model is dynamic, meaning that it continually informs itself and improves itself through a continuous feedback loop, right? Continually learning, continually growing, continually advancing. This process occurs internally between the client and the clinician, between the client and their communities. And so it allows for improvements to be made during the course of treatment and on throughout the rest of life, basically, because we all know that recovery never truly ends. And this is a model which can be adapted for a lifelong journey. So, addiction and leadership. I originally conducted a study that covered a three-year period that included 15 participants from very diverse backgrounds all across the United States. Some New York Times bestselling authors, some media moguls, a lot of influencers that you would recognize. And I spent over a 3-year period, numerous hours interviewing them, carrying out focus groups, observations, and field notes. And the findings revealed 21 themes. Again, either character traits, personality traits, or experiences. 21 themes which people with SUD commonly share with great leaders. Now, we're working on the second study. It includes over 140 participants, and we've taken those 21 themes and distilled them down into 10 traits which are most often in active addiction. I said that right, leadership traits in active addiction, and we'll clarify that in just a moment. And so we also were able to create an assessment survey using 63 questions to identify not only the leadership traits, but all the traits, positive and negative, that we possess. And what has emerged so far in this study, the second study, which is currently being conducted, there are 4 prominent traits that people in addiction hold, and that is resilience, creativity, gratitude, and self-awareness. And the research team is myself, Dr. Eric Carter, who's not here today, Brian Privett, and Dr. Dan Phillips. And only one of these researchers has a history of substance use disorder. Guess who? So what you're looking at now, this is a table which originated from that original study. And on the left-hand side, you have the 8 leadership dimensions according to transformative and authentic leadership theories. And on the right-hand side, you have a collection of those 21 themes. Some are repeated in multiple dimensions or categories. And so you can kind of see how this maps on to the dimensions, those traits, how they kind of can be fleshed out within each of those dimensions. And so I looked at leadership, right? There's a lot of definitions for leadership. And basically it's influence, and it's a process that occurs. But most importantly, here's what's fascinating about transformational leadership and people in addiction, right? Transformational leadership has more to do with an interior way of knowing and imparting those ways of knowing instead of focusing on external structures and processes. So there's an internal awareness, an internal dynamism that's occurring in transformational leadership. And this is shared or exchanged not so much through procedures or processes, but by simply being near somebody who's a transformational leader. People in addiction and recovery are also authentic leaders. Now, most notably, as the recovery journey unfolds, this emerges. This authentic leadership. And so what happens here is in recovery, and before that even, in addiction, we realize that to uphold this perception of perfection is pointless. We learn to drop the mask because we failed so many times. We realize the mask does us no good anyway. So we learn to be authentic with one another, right? And what that does, that removes a layer of separation between the leader and the group. It allows for quicker bonds of connection to develop, and it allows for stronger bonds of appreciation and trust and gratitude to emerge so that the entire group is focused on accomplishing whatever goal is in front of them. This is the advantage that people in addiction recovery offer. You know what? We've got to be rigorously authentic in recovery. Our lives depend on it. And so the next slide shows you those 10 leadership traits which emerged from the first and also now in the second study. So these are those traits that are commonly held by people with substance use disorder, even in active addiction, and people who are great leaders. And so those traits are tenacity, resilience, empathy, authenticity. People in recovery especially are motivational. They're self-aware, they're creative, socially intelligent, determined, and appreciative. And so what this model does, it actually changes the entire dynamic, the entire perspective. And instead of starting from deficiencies or weaknesses or failures, it starts from strength. Right out of the gate, it introduces dignity. It uplifts self-confidence, right? It builds and recognizes those valuable traits that we all possess. And so when we build upon strengths, a lot of great things happen. And this approach is not necessarily a cookie-cutter approach. It allows for a person-centered approach to take place, right? It broadens the definition of what successful recovery means. And another reason why our starting point matters, instead of focusing exclusively on problems and failures, which is the approach taken by the traditional model, the trait-based approach allows clinicians to acknowledge every individual has a very unique set of strengths and abilities that he or she can rely on to overcome challenges. The trait-based approach aligns itself with mental health recovery by focusing on a person's ability and helping build confidence, purpose, and hope for the recovery journey ahead. And studies actually show that strength-based approach is linked to positive recovery outcomes, improved behavioral patterns, and life satisfaction. And again, all environments contain resources that can help individuals develop their strengths. And so this asset-based approach results in improved self-confidence, understanding, and momentum for the recovery journey ahead. Now, the trait-based model of recovery. I'm not going to spend a lot of time right here, right now. This is to kind of give you a visual representation for where we're going and what I'm talking about. So there's 4 phases in this model: trait identification, solutions-focused therapy, entrepreneurial opportunities, and leadership development. And we'll go a little bit deeper in just a moment, but right now we're going to look at some of the guiding principles of this model. So it's person-centered and dynamic. It builds upon a positive understanding, beginning with the person's assets as opposed to their deficiencies. It is holistic. meaning that it addresses the whole person and also incorporates external supports right into that treatment plan. And it is transformative, entirely transformative. And another set of principles is this. We believe that treatment should not be rigid, or recovery should not be rigid. Whatever works is fine. I'm part of the Opioid Abatement Advisory Commission in Kentucky, and we conducted a series of 12 town halls all the way from Pikeville to Paducah, all across the state. And what we kept telling people, right, at these town halls is submit something that is innovative and creative, something that will change your communities, and we'll look at it and we'll roll with it. And honestly, that's where we're at, right? That is the current state of things, so to speak. And so that's another guiding principle of the model, and it's best supported. Recovery is best supported through relationships. Isolation made us sick. And we cannot remain in recovery isolated. We've got to connect to others, even when we don't feel like it. That's healthy, it's productive, and it can in fact help us step out of active addiction and put us on the pathway towards recovery. And so this model includes individual strengths, family strengths, and community strengths. And recovery, lastly, is an ongoing path of self-realization, self-improvement, and social engagement. Recovery never ends. Now, back to our model. So at the foundation of this model is the identification of traits that each person possesses. And so the trait-based model has at its core the path of self-awareness and how that understanding can be shared with others and connected to purpose. And so this begins by identifying the traits that we all possess. Now, this can be done in a variety of ways, right? Most notably, it is done in cooperation with a clinician that is using various assessment tools. It's also accomplished through practices of self-actualization or discovery, things such as meditation, journaling, contemplative prayer. And there's even a space within this for plant medicine. The studies currently are very, very promising to look at root causes and what promotes neurogenesis. And so it's this path of getting to know who we really are. And so the clinician would then employ a solutions-focused therapeutical approach, which is focused on the future, it's goal-oriented, and of course it's evidence-based. And the client is then connected with entrepreneurial opportunities. And this allows for a broad application of those traits in various ways. And when I say entrepreneurial opportunities, I don't just mean business entrepreneurial opportunities. We're talking about nonprofit volunteerism. We're talking about social justice initiatives. We're talking about ministerial opportunities, laying open wide the room and the world of possibility and opportunity for those in recovery. We're going to go take a deeper dive in just a moment into each one of these phases, but we're kind of getting acclimated to what we're discussing right now. And so the Leadership Academy, another vital component of this model of recovery, is built specifically for those in recovery, and I'll go over all the content areas in just a second. It's very, very exciting. But what I want you to look at now, remember the 10 traits. The evidence-based approach, which shares and suggests and supports the idea that people with substance use disorder have these traits operating within their lives. And central to the trait-based model of recovery is this. This is transformational leadership and self-actualization process. So, all of these traits have both a shadow side or a negative side or a destructive side, however you want to label it, and they also have a positive side or a light side or a productive side. And of course, we're borrowing a little bit from Carl Jung here when we talk about the shadow self. But when these traits are used negatively, all of them, we'll go through them in just a second. When they're used negatively, when they're functioning in a negative fashion, right, they function to maintain addictive behavioral patterns. And on the positive side, on the light side, they function to empower the recovery journey. So we'll look at some examples here. So guys, these traits are present at birth. They're inherent qualities that are possessed by those that are in addiction, right? And if they're not identified or supported at an early age, they can quickly run off course, especially when they're hijacked by drugs. And so the goal of this model is to use these traits on the productive side, right? And so let's just walk through them. Tenacity. On the light side, a tenacious person is goal-focused, right? But on the negative side, they become socially disruptive. Tenacious in their requests for more. Tenacious in not getting help. Tenacious to find a way when they need a way. Resilience. Another quality. It's a never-give-up attitude, right? And it repeats on the negative fashion or on the shadow side. This resiliency is demonstrated in addiction, right? It's demonstrated. I've experienced it in my life. 17 years of active addiction. I was arrested 18 times. I've nearly overdosed 4 times. I have been raided by the police twice. But I can say I was resilient. Empathy. Empathy is an emergent trait. It's a secondary quality. It's different from sympathy because empathy is the bonding or the connection that occurs when we are able to enter into the plight, the pain, or the suffering of someone else. And people in addiction and addiction recovery are experts at this because we've traveled the way of hardship, because empathy has been cultivated through failure, through heartache, through brokenness, right? And it's compassion in action. In recovery, man, people like this are exceptional world-class leaders. However, on the negative side, it can get very manipulative. This ability to connect and to identify and to understand the emotional state of others, we learn this, right? In active addiction, and we optimize it. We maximize it for our personal gain. We will manipulate others so that they will do what we want them to do. Authenticity, right? It's transparent with weaknesses. This is vital for those of us in recovery. We can't wear the mask anymore. We have to be honest with ourselves, honest with our friends and family, co-workers, peers, our loved ones, and it's a valuable characteristic. And actually, this does have a negative side when you're talking about uncontrolled responses to difficulties. When you're talking about when our emotions just land all over the map, uncontrolled, unmanaged, right? It can become destructive and motivational, right? Is another quality on the previous slide. People in recovery inspire others. However, in active addiction, it can lead others to danger. You're looking at now self-awareness. On the positive side, self-aware people know when they make mistakes. Self-aware people know when there's room for improvement and they know what to improve upon. People who are self-aware are transparent with their vulnerabilities, right? And this is entirely advantageous when it comes to leadership because you're admitting mistakes. And here's one thing about leadership. It's no longer the most effective approach to take an authoritarian approach, right? A do as I say, not do as I do type of mentality. In our society and what we've experienced, and honestly, this is a result of so many ethical failures by our governmental leaders, religious leaders, social leaders. We've seen so much. Now we appreciate those who are honest with us, those who are sincere, Those who are open about their shortcomings and invite us in to participate on the path of improvement. Man, that's the type of leader that's most effective in our world today. And so, obviously, those in recovery are geared towards this, right? Creativity is another trait. In recovery, you find solutions. The positive side of this trait, or the light side of this trait, you find solutions. And on the negative side, we remain in denial. We become very creative with the absurd excuses that we make to say we're really not that bad. To say that you're not the problem. No, to say that I'm not the problem. Perhaps you're the problem. Social intelligence, this cultivates relationships on the positive side, right? We understand each other, but there again, kind of like manipulation, it attempts to control others, right? Determination, on the light side, the positive side, the productive side, it's a strong commitment to accomplish goals, right? But obviously on the shadow side or the negative side, you're going to use despite the risk that it incurs. And appreciation, right? And people in recovery fully cultivate and develop this characteristic. Unfortunately, in active addiction, it's only present when using. And so how do you stay on the light side? Well, number one, it takes work. Number two, it takes learning to be present in the moment. Present in the moment. It's not fretting over past mistakes or worrying about the unknowns of tomorrow. It's about being right here, right now. Because this is where self-discovery takes place. This is where leadership takes place. It's in the present moment. And we, through this model, teach that in all stages, right? And to stay on the light side, it takes honest dialogue with others, to be honest with ourselves. And it takes acknowledging who we really are and not trying to hide from it or run from it in denial, but learning from it. So back to the trait identification phase. And now I want to say something about this model. It's not sequential, right? You don't have to go numerically from step or phase 1, 2, 3, 4. It is a dynamic model, meaning that it's interactive. You can be carrying out multiple phases of this model at the same time, right? So it's continuously informing itself, improving itself. So again, the trait identification, this is most notably accomplished through therapy, through strength-based assessments, meditation, spiritual or self-actualization practices. It's connecting to others and allows the person to realize their unique set of traits and identify which ones need to be developed more fully in the entrepreneurial stage, which Brian will share about in just a moment. And again, to solutions-focused therapy. This is therapy that's focused on solutions instead of problems and putting those solutions into action. And this therapeutical approach is brief, yet it's effective, right? Lasting anywhere from a few sessions up to 8 weeks, which ultimately reduces cost and makes it a bit more affordable. Also, this type of therapeutical approach develops critical thinking and leads to empowerment. Now, the Leadership Academy. Again, all phases are vital in this model, but this to me is something really, really special because of what it covers and what it includes. So it's an 8-week curriculum initially, and it can be customized to fit residential treatment settings, IOP, or outpatient. And the curriculum actually is very robust. And so within the academy, clients learn how to use their traits positively or productively. They're going to be doing that in all stages of the model, but it's fully understood and practiced in the Leadership Academy. And then it's put into play in entrepreneurial opportunities. It works like a charm, magically together, just continually becoming more robust and refined. And so the curriculum is created specifically, again, for those in recovery. It includes such skills as critical thinking, decision-making, time management, communication. Topics also cover diversity, inclusion, social intelligence. It covers subjects in business management, ethics, financing, networking, coaching for interviews and public speaking. It includes internships and job shadowing. And this Leadership Academy is a collaborative learning environment with empowerment as one of its goals. And so this 8-week curriculum actually can be progressed through in cohorts. So after you complete an 8-week period in this academy, a client would have the option to continue with a cohort into the next 8-week period, which is more advanced levels of learning in all of these areas. And it can be repeated another time for a total of 24 weeks at different stages, cohorts moving together as a group, right, and going into more advanced topics within those content areas. And what this does, this helps keep clients committed to treatment. We know how important it is to keep the client in the residential treatment facility within the setting. And we know the barriers that are presented by the insurance reimbursements. This right here is a lucrative appeal not only to the clients who wish to remain in treatment, but also it allows treatment providers to look externally for resource development. It looks to the communities who are looking for transformative and authentic leaders to step into their organizations and improve it. And so this is a very dynamic and continually improving component as well in this model. And it results at the end in a certificate of completion, which equips graduates with valuable credentials. Now, entrepreneurial opportunities, and I'll let my colleague up here in just a second. So a successful entrepreneur is a great storyteller. They know how to captivate their audience and build a brand around their story. And there's no better story than the comeback story. The underdog who wins against all odds. We love it. It's built into our DNA. And this story is told through our lives, through our words, through our behavior, right? And so once a person has this unique understanding or understanding of their unique traits, they can then work with the clinician and through the Leadership Academy and put what they've learned into practice at these entrepreneurial opportunities. And so here's an example. Let's say somebody scores high on empathy. They could then go on to volunteer at an assisted living facility or a hospital. And through this engagement, they discover something they'd never known before. They discover that not only do they love doing this type of service, but they're pretty darn good at it as well. And what will ultimately happen, they can go from that experience and decide to pursue a career in healthcare. And go on and work in the field and then help others through not only their vocation, but then through their collaboration and participation in their lives. Another example, and this actually is a case study. This actually happened. So let's say somebody scores high on creativity, right? The client, let's say you have a client that loves art. They love drawing, they love painting, but they've never really pursued it as a career, right? And through the Leadership Academy, they are connected to an entrepreneurial opportunity in education at a local university that has scholarships available for those in recovery. And they love it. They love what they're doing. They can see themselves working in that field for the rest of their lives. They go on and complete their bachelor's degree, and they start doing shows and eventually launch their own advertising company, hire others, and then they create a nonprofit to help local kids learn how to paint as a response to stress and trauma in their lives. You can do the same with culinary arts, graphic design, theater. The possibilities are endless. This also leads to the launch of new types of businesses, which increase employment rates in the community. And here's why this piece of the model is so vital, is so critical, is so important, because we can give people all the tools for recovery. But if they just go back home and isolate without never meaningfully connecting to their communities, we've done them no good. And so this encourages the connection to community. This encourages an exploration of our traits and our treasures, right? This approach closes and addresses that gap. It requires us to be engaged, requires us to be connected. We can't go home and isolate. We've got to be engaged. Connects people to their communities, provides a healthy outlet for personal expression, and fosters a sense of hope, purpose, and fulfillment for the future. Now, to hear how these stories play out, I'd like to invite Brian Privett to the podium.
So, I'll tell you a little bit of how I met Jason Roop, Dr. Roop. I'm going to tell you a little bit about my story in a minute, but I was on the bench. I was a judge. I left the bench because I wanted to do some good work for people, and it was very limited. You can't really do good work for people on the bench. You can't hardly even talk to them. So I left there, went to work for a company that does treatment, substance abuse treatment, and everybody was talking about Jason Roop. I was like, all right, I got to go meet this dude. So drove 2 hours just to have lunch with him one day. We started talking about his research, and I was sold from the get-go. Because I think what got me, and I think is what gets a lot of people that see Dr. Roop's research and that I've been able to come in on the backside of it a little bit, is that it's important because it fills a need. It is important because all of us in this room, no matter what area of working with people with substance use disorder, we all recognize that we recognize these traits in the people we know, but we've never been able to quite put a finger on it. We've never been able to name it. This is the beginning of naming that and dealing with how we can help these people in a way that takes into account their individualized strengths as opposed to forcing into the systems. But research is important because until this point, we've all been relying on anecdotal evidence. Everybody has stories. Dr. Roop has the evidence. I've got the anecdotal evidence. Before I start, let me say I am a former lawyer, a former prosecutor, a former circuit judge in Kentucky. Like I said, I went into all those things wanting to help people, but I was never satisfied with the systems that we all participate in, whether it's court, jail. At the time, we did a terrible job in residential treatment for the first 10 years of the program because there wasn't enough money to pay for it. There weren't enough insurance coverage. We relied on old, outdated models that didn't take into account MOUD or cognitive behavioral therapy or any of the other modalities that we all know work. What I found out once I got into heavy, the top kind of the scale as a circuit judge, is that those systems don't work, and change within those systems is slow, incredibly slow. Tried to change within the system myself, trying to do some things, and I am too impatient. So I left. So now I work for spreading the message for people that we all try to help to people that need to hear it. Government officials, the public, churches, doctors, hospitals, anybody that needs to hear it. Here's what I learned in court. Of course, we know incarceration doesn't work. About 5-10 years ago, we all decided that incarceration doesn't work. Well, what works? What I bought into was drug court. Now, if you look at the current best practices for drug court, it's a lot different than the way that we all practice it out in the community. Because the way we practice drug court as judges, a lot of us, is based on those modalities from the 1990s that we know don't work. You cannot put someone in jail on a rigid schedule of you have you cannot put someone in jail. Like first offense, 7 days in jail. Second offense, 14 days in jail. Third offense, 28 days in jail. All the way up. Have people spending 90 days in jail for a positive on a drug screen. It's insane because it hurts everybody. It hurts the participant. It hurts the system. Everything. So we tried to do some changes there, but judges are incredibly hard to train and to teach because, except for Judge Sloan in the room right now, we all have these gigantic egos. And we don't want to learn. We're not very teachable. Would you agree to that? Yes, sir. Okay. But it was the way we treated substance use disorder in court was all accountability, not much treatment, and little room for variation. So I was searching, when I was on the bench, I was searching for ways to kind of accomplish my own goals of helping people and finding the best ways and seeing things that don't work. And I actually had a paradigm shift here at the RX Summit in 2019. And that's when I met Judge Dwayne Sloan, saw his presentation on his 10 Rocks program, which, if you all don't know about, is spread all over Tennessee and probably other states by now. But it is an individualized court program for folks that fall in the cracks between drug court and straight probation. Drug court, you're supposed to pick those high risk, high need individuals. The ones that do great on low supervision or probation don't need much help, but you've got 90% of the people in the middle. So what Judge Sloan's program developed was individualized court for each of those people based on their individualized needs for therapy. Scalable, replicable, based on best practices, evidence-based methods that actually became available to the courts. Now, did I miss anything?
No.
Okay. I have since become friends with Judge Sloan, and I consider him a very important mentor. But at the same time, that initial meeting probably led to my leaving the bench for good. You're welcome. So let me tell you a story about Dwayne. This is funny. So I met Dwayne here at RX Summit. We went to the Stimulant Summit in Miami later, and so this is why Dwayne is not always a good mentor. No, it involves stuff at the summit. It didn't involve stuff out in Miami. But there's a speaker up there. One of the main plenary speakers, the keynote speakers, was this big old sheriff from Arizona. I mean, he's probably 6'8", 250, solid muscle and firearms. Yeah, solid muscle, firearms, cowboy hat, big old boots. And the whole time he was there, when he was speaking for an hour and a half, he kept talking about junkies over and over and over again. And me and Judge Sloan were standing in the back, and I just started fuming after a while. And I was like, man, why do they have this guy speak? What are we going to do about it? He needs to really be taught. And Judge was like, say something. Like, no. It's a question and answer. Say something. So here I am, goaded by Judge Sloan, in front of this 6'8", 350. He keeps getting bigger every time I tell the story. Question and answer. I said, can you please stop using the word junkie? And he looked at me, and I swear I thought I was going to get a size 13 boot right up my butt. And I turned around and Dwayne was gone. So he's not always a great mentor. Sometimes he's a goater. So on the bench, here's what I saw in drug court. So we had a participant in there one time. He was, my training in drug court, it's all about behavior modification, accountability, It's heavy on sending people to jail, consequences. We have consequences for everything. This dude that I had did not care about a single consequence ever. He was going to have his way. We called him hard-headed. You're never going to make it through here. You're never going to achieve recovery if you don't get that chip off your shoulder. Does it sound familiar? Have you all said this before? So we're the same thing. One of the big things in drug court was we wanted to keep track of where you're working. So you had to get a paycheck job. We had to see where you were working, how much you were working, if you were late, all that kind of stuff. He didn't want to do that. He knew he could do things on his own. He finally got through drug court because we bent the rules a little bit and let him go out and work on home improvement like he wanted to. So now he owns a contracting company that employs 20 people. He started the most vital NA group that's gigantic. It's been going on. They meet 3 times a week. And he owns his own sober living home. So here's what this research shows, is that the traditional methods of dealing with people with substance use disorder, and I am complicit, of anyone else. We failed to take into consideration traits of excellence and leadership that come out of addiction and recovery. Yeah. Our folks have these leadership abilities, and we have to learn how to deal with that and how to help cultivate those. You cannot have a system, whether it's a treatment regimen, a treatment modality, whether it's social services, whether it's court system, so rigid that it breaks. Either the system breaks or it tries to break the person. Yes. Best leadership now is flexible and individualized in dealing with people we help. I have some entrepreneurial leanings myself. So as far as entrepreneurship goes, that is a good vehicle if we provide people with skills to help them accomplish their goals in recovery and in their life. Richard Branson said entrepreneurship is about turning what excites you into life into capital so that you can do more of it and move forward with it. Another quote about entrepreneurship. An entrepreneur is someone who jumps off a cliff and builds a plane on the way down. Now, how many people in active addiction can you say that about too? One of the things that I always hear in a treatment capacity and previously in courts was somebody be complaining about going to meetings or going to class or something like that. It's like, why? Well, I got to walk 10 minutes. And so, well, how far did you walk to go get the drugs? I don't say that. That's peer-to-peer. But that tenacity really shows. Entrepreneurs are risk-averse. They are willing to believe in their own abilities to follow their passions and risk personally and financially. From someone going into entrepreneurship and recovery as opposed to addiction, when using, they risk life, health, safety. In entrepreneurship, they risk financial stability. And some people are saying, well, I had a question one time. It's like, well, what's the risk there? I mean, how do you compare? It's like, well, using the risk, it seems like when you first get that first car, and the insurance is paid for. That's an important point I learned a long time ago. They're very proud of not only do they have a car, but it has insurance on it. A house. To them, those two basic things, having a car with insurance, having a house, either they're buying on a mortgage or they've leased a house that's big enough to hold all their kids, which they've gotten back. That is a bigger risk to them than the danger from using ever was. So entrepreneurs in recovery have more to risk from just basic things that we think of. That, you know, if your business goes bust, you might lose that house and that car. One area of concern, and the one that I think we're going to look at going forward from this, and there's some opportunities coming up, is, and then Dr. Roop's going to talk about shortly, is training for those in recovery. Some of our folks have never had the opportunity to receive any formal training or education. College, grad school, or even very good experience. They may have ideas, they may have gumption, they may have resilience, they may have grit, but they don't know how to start. One of the things that we tried to do was when somebody had an idea, send it to the Small Business Administration or the chamber locally, which would have free classes on basic accounting principles, how to market on social media, how to use an Excel spreadsheet, those kind of things. Those are the basic skills that we kind of learn by osmosis, or through our own work, that these folks don't have the basic skills for. But if they had those basic skills, they could just fly. So they need training, they need education, and they need to be in the rooms like this. They need to be in the rooms with the chamber, with the Rotary, to network. Because so much of the opportunities that we have had, and I say we, I mean people not in recovery, and then once people learn, once they're in recovery, they're learned by osmosis from just being in the room. The connections you make, I didn't know that you could, run a bank. I didn't know someone could own a bank. How does that happen? Those kind of things. But the Leadership Academy that Dr. Roop is talking about is one of those model ideas that is going to come out of this. In the meantime, we all have to remember to be flexible. I've got some quotes up here from my folks, so you can read along with this. Today, my leadership traits that were once used for negative, self-serving purposes are now used for the good to help others find sustained recovery. Trained recovery leaders break stigma and advocate for addiction, mental health, recovery support services all around the country. This is someone who is an official of a national organization for support of persons in recovery. Recovery forced me to take a long, hard look at myself, especially the things that I don't like. I think that self-serving results in some humility and self-awareness that serves us well in leadership roles. Straight from what the studies have shown. This is my guy in drug court. I've been a leader my whole life. Let me tell you, his ego, it served him well. The good thing, too, is he was the only person I knew who didn't care to cuss in court whenever he wanted to. So I'm glad he kept cuss words out of this quote. I've been a leader my whole life. It boiled down to what I channeled the ability toward, whether it be hustling or working. I find that I can adapt to anything, but most of all, I found that change was only possible when I got tired of the pain and consequences of the active addict lifestyle. Addiction requires a certain perseverance. So does recovery. So does leadership. Here's what Dr. Roop was talking about, the positive, negative. It's like a superhero that goes from the dark side to the good side. They didn't lose their superpowers. They just stopped using them for crappy reasons. So in order to go forward some stuff in the future, I'm going to turn it back over to Dr. Roop. Thank you all for having me today. It's been a long journey since that 2019 RX Summit, so thank you.
All right, so what does this mean? Well, first of all, it changes how we view addiction. It places it in a much more positive light and a more truthful light. And if we're being honest, I believe that a lot of the interest and stakeholders that we engage on a day-to-day level, there's a certain amount of addiction fatigue where people continuously hear about the problem again and again and again. And people, honestly, are a bit fatigued with it. What this model does is re-energizes momentum around the entire issue, right? It places it in a positive light, starting from strength, not starting from the deficiency, starting from the positive qualities. It also shows us that successful recovery can build upon the positive qualities of individuals. It enhances levels of commitment, empowerment, and purpose, and in that moment, dignity is delivered and hope is renewed. And when you share this information with someone in addiction or in recovery, their eyes light up, their chest sticks out a little more proudly, right? Because this is not Pollyanna-ish. This is truth. That we all have these incredible assets that we're born with. And when we can help others to identify those and then motivate a community to support those, we're going to see positive traction on this front. This also allows, and I mentioned it earlier, treatment providers to have an opportunity to become solutions providers for local businesses looking for dependable and talented leaders in their organization, not just to address the workforce concerns, but those organizations that are looking for transformative and authentic leaders to step in and improve their organizations. And it provides a structured and effective approach to leadership development within the treatment setting. That's what Brian was sharing earlier. It's within that context we hit on all the high points. So in closing, my mom always told me to find the good in somebody. And I had no idea at the time that she was sharing with me wisdom from above. And it's that wisdom that we all have something to offer, that we all have these hidden treasures that should become the standard for how we view and treat addiction. You see these leadership traits, the tenacity, the resilience, determination, the inspirational motivation, the creativity that people with substance use disorder have. It positions us to impact others around us in a unique, meaningful, and lasting way, in a transformative way. You see, some of the best leaders you may have ever met or will meet may not be in a classroom setting at a university today. They may be sitting in the halls of a treatment facility or attending a 12-step meeting just trying to make it through the day. But they will. And they will emerge to lead, encourage, empower, and inspire others to do the same.
All right, questions? We've got the microphone over here. If anybody has a question, please come over. Mr. Varney?
All right.
Do they not screen these people who are questioning?
I did not give them a chance.
He was moving to
Pass.
It's part of my determination and resiliency. So I do just want to say thank you all for this. And it almost makes me wish that I could go back through treatment 14 years ago to go through this model. So my question is, what are you going to do next?
Right.
Or when are you going to use this in other treatment facilities? Are you going to market it towards that, or are you going to start your own? And when's your book coming out?
Well, Carl, that's a great question, and I'm so appreciative that you asked that. The way that I see this playing out is I don't think this model needs to be... Is it on? Can you guys hear me? Yeah. I don't think that this model needs to be constrained or limited to one treatment organization, facility, or setting. And what we would like to do is to see this replicated all throughout the country. We could go and do trainings, and we could just educate others, the staff, about how we implement this model. And so, Carl, that's kind of where I see it going next. I plan, we've got several other conferences later this year, but I would like to write that book, The Trait-Based Model of Recovery, and include a biographical component to it. And I would like for you to write the foreword, please, Carl.
I'm waiting for the audio book.
Well, I suppose that answered my question a little bit. My name is Margaret Kaiser. I'm from Baltimore, Maryland. I work with the Office of Drug Control Policy in Harford County. I'm a person in long-term recovery. I'm a prevention specialist today. I'm a drug court graduate myself. And so a lot of what I focus on is training for peer recovery specialists themselves. Currently, I'm working on research that involves training for peer recovery specialists, specifically working with the co-occurring disorder population. I'm curious about if you feel as though that this curriculum is appropriate for peer recovery specialists to administer themselves, and if it would be effective for folks who not only have substance use disorder but are also experiencing co-occurring disorders, recognizing that strength-based model.
Yeah, absolutely. I think peer support specialists are probably the best positioned people to facilitate components of this model. Absolutely. Because we've been there and we can relate and communicate with similar language, and I fully see an appropriate and effective space for that to occur.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for
Yeah,
this work.
thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Roop. Thank you, Mr. Privett.
Thank you.
Hi guys, I'm Cody Conway. I'm here from Arkansas. I work for the University of Arkansas at Little Rock. This is a comment. It's not a question. I just wanted to give you guys, from my deepest heart, thanks for doing this work, because I feel that it bridges the gap between so many things. It bridges the gap between 12-step culture and the real world. It bridges the gap. I could go on. There's a lot of things, but I got sober in 12-step fellowship 5 years ago, and there's, for good reason, there's a lot of focus on ego deflation. And so we really pound in character defects that gets a lot of airtime. But in terms of finding our strengths, I feel like you're kind of left on your own to do that.
That's true.
Yes. And I just wanted to share that I was just accepted into law school.
Oh,
Which is
congratulations.
on a leadership scholarship.
Oh, that's great.
And
That's beautiful.
yes, and I thought, but I had to figure or come to terms with those strengths on my own.
Yeah.
So when I think about, I'm displaying one of the traits of emotional,
Yeah.
over emotionality.
Yeah, right.
When I think about what this means for people who are just in the beginning of their journey, it really moves me.
Yeah.
And I also want to thank Mr. Privett for modeling what allyship looks like for our population by speaking about stigmatizing language. So,
It was scary when I did it.
yeah. But I'm very overwhelmed with gratitude, so thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm from the Northeast Tennessee area of Tennessee. I've been able to hear Judge Sloan and as well as Dr. Stephen Lloyd speak a couple of times, several times actually. I have two questions. My first one is, we have a drug court program in Northeast Tennessee, and we're very thankful for what they are able to do. But do you know of any resources or anything that we could use to help us advocate for our drug court expanding into assisting those with medically assisted treatment, because they are an abstinence-only drug court program? And I know that
So
you
that's
have a
one-
lot
that's
of
one of the
information
things,
on
yeah.
that one. And then my second question is, as someone who is an advocate for those in recovery and who employs persons that are in recovery, do you have options for resources that are available to us as employers that we can more, help with professional development for those we have that are that work for us that are in recovery? Thank you.
So that's what I was talking about. Judges being teachable. They're generally hard-headed. And I can say that because I generally have a hard head about a lot of things. If you look at the NADCP and their best practices that they put out, if a judge will follow those are backed by research. The current version of the NADCP recommendations. It includes MOUD. It includes very little jail sanctions. It has to be, the only way I found to change that system is for the people within it and around it, probation and parole, drug court workers themselves, to continually educate the judge, continually, and to go to bat when he or she wants to put somebody in jail for 7 days for a positive drug screen. Say that's against NADCP best practices. Just continually harp on that. Eventually the judge will either just get tired and give in or retire. So we're lucky enough to where, in Kentucky we have we're at that period where we have a turnover now that we got a lot of younger judges come in. So we're able to reach those more readily. As far as resources out in the community, I know that in Tennessee you all have like a case manager or something that works with your probation or parole. Do you have a TCM or just at least a case manager, some kind of position? Who do you use to do your assessments?
It's the criminal justice liaison.
Criminal justice liaison. That might be a person to help at least gather resources, but you're dealing with case management at that point. As far as education resources in the community, there's no one clearinghouse for it. There would be a clearing, there could be in the future sometime if somebody puts them together, but like everything else in our industries, in our area, it starts locally with some good people. And, Dr. Monty Burks is right here. He's got all his good people too. So, and he's talking and he's not listening to me right now, so that's okay. But it starts local and it spreads out. Tennessee, between everything y'all got going on, it's just amazing. Y'all are not a Medicaid expansion state, so you have some, Kentucky luckily is, so you'll have some real challenges with as far as treatment, accessibility, but you all have incredible grassroots and government support for those grassroots movements. So check into those.
Hi, my name is Sage Chioma, and I'm from Guilford County in North Carolina. And I want to just say thank you based on the fact that I am a person in long-term recovery. And I'm just starting Chioma Transformational Consulting after working in nonprofits forever and not having this model. I really fell a lot, skinned my knees, and it took forever to find my voice, even though I'm a poet, right? And I try to bring inspirational speaking, poetry, everything into social justice, DEI, and all the work that needs to be done in that area. So I thank you because I promote leadership from the bottom up. I think it's a very real concept, and I think it's where we're headed. And my nonprofit that I work for, I've started something called Parents Promoting Wellness. And so we come together and create safe spaces. So I want to bring this model to Guilford County like yesterday. And I'm my question is, how soon will we be able to really spread it? Because it's so long overdue. And self-worth is something that I'm still working with because I am a person who survived the crack cocaine epidemic. And there are a lot of us, but what my community is still recovering from is the response. And so I bring poetry and those kind of conversations into spaces that, create a message of hope, resilience, and that type of stuff. So I know empathy, if we can lead with that. And I want to thank the judge with my whole heart for being able to say, I can drop the mask, right? And I can drop all of those titles and all those different things to really do sincere work. And authenticity, when, I promote it sometimes, it's not well received. So this helps us to be able to be in situations where transparency isn't always welcome. So thank you. And could you tell us how we could get this to the communities yesterday?
Yeah. Well, get in the time machine and go backwards in time. Actually, I believe our contact information is in the PowerPoint provided to you. If my email is there, phone number is there, also my website. So it's going to be www.jasonrootphd.com. And there's a place on there to contact me. And if you will send a message and just reach out, we will move to you as quickly as possible. I think that we can get this implemented probably within the next 90 days. And then we can start rolling it out across the country. Yeah.
I'm looking.
Yeah, and so that's one thing that
I got
Dr.
one
Roop-
job and I can't get it.
One thing that Dr. Roop too hasn't mentioned is that his research was published. That citation is in the information there. So you'll have access to it if you can get to that. What journal was it?
Slide 2, I think, Sherman.
What journal were you in?
The Journal of Addiction Research and Therapy.
Okay.
There we go.
Yep.
Here we go. There it is.
Yeah, so if you guys will just send a note, you can either email or via the website, just contact us, and I will respond, and we will work to provide you exactly what you've requested in an appropriate, timely manner.
There's
got Laura
Brian's as well. It's just for switch.
Got Laura County in the house now. Go ahead.
I thought you guys did a great job on your presentation. Me and Dr. Roop have been trying to meet up for a while. We're kind of like two of America's most wanted. It's rare you see us in the same place at the same time because we're all over the country. But as you know, this was by far my favorite session as a serial entrepreneur, and being in Bright Leadership, one of 40 Kentuckians in the state to be picked. That changed my life. Like all I do with my clothing company that I started, Adam Larkin, I'm a person in long-term recovery, is I just go with motivation, inspiration, trying to show people you only get one life. You got to do the most, and you got to also get outside of yourself and help somebody else, because by doing that, God will bless you and reward you and help you. And I just thought this was a great session, and we need to start like a long-term recovery kind of Bright Leadership thing.
Yeah.
I think that would be awesome.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
That's great. Yeah. Adam, you typify and personify the model just with everything that you're actively engaged in, and it's good. We had to finally connect outside of the state of Kentucky before we met, so it's good to see you. Thanks for attending.
How you doing? Giuseppe Mandel. I'm also a person in long-term recovery from Tin High, Las Vegas, Nevada. I love what you said, especially the judge up here, because I successfully failed drug court.
A lot of people have. A whole lot of people have. Yeah.
And then through a long journey, I ended up getting sober again, and just exactly by the traits that you've seen, by the traits, and so now I work in recovery to get back, and I'm always looking for other options. But the question is, have you implemented this or shown any of the data to, like, say, higher organizations with these traits and data, like, say, even law enforcement or different models of that?
Right. We have not. We've kept it pretty close to the vest until this summit, the RX Summit. We did share it a couple weeks ago in Kentucky at the Chamber of Commerce event. We're not currently carrying this out, but we are accepting applications for further studies to be carried out within the treatment setting. And then we're looking at several approaches when it comes to multiple phases of this model, but to include external partners, for example, in the integration of the model within their communities. So it's a brand new baby, so to speak, and we want it to grow up as fastly and rapidly and robustly as possible. So yeah, hopefully we're open to any opportunities, and we'll explore any of those.
Well, thanks. Yeah, I'd love to connect after the seminar at some point.
Let's do it. Congratulations on your recovery journey. Everybody that's shared, congratulations on your recovery journey.
We have just 2 more minutes here. You've answered the questions that I had. No other questions have been asked. Is there anybody else have any other questions?
Good job, guys.
Do either one of you have anything else you'd like to say?
We're good. Just
All
thank
right.
you guys so much.
y'all.
for your
Thank
time.
you all very much. Another round of applause for Jason.